Okay, I'll call the meeting to order. Please have a roll call, Karen.
Corby Chappelle,
Here.
Becky J, absent. Sally Cohen, here. Jose Oliveros is absent. Alex Braskovich,
Here.
Evan Soares,
Present.
and Jordan Carpenter asked to be excused.
All right, did everybody have a chance to review the minutes of the February 5th, 2024 meeting? If there's any corrections that need to be made? No? I will entertain a motion to approve the minutes. So moved.
Second.
All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? The minutes are accepted. We don't have any visitors tonight, so I guess we can probably just drive all the way down to the public hearing. So this evening, the Planning Commission will hold a public hearing on legislative amendment LA-2023-06, potential change to the Independence Development Code, 4,500 square foot lot variance. Planning Commission will make a recommendation to the City Council based on the complete record, including the testimony received at tonight's public hearing. These proceedings will be recorded. This hearing will be held in accordance with the land use procedures required by the city and the state of Oregon. This is a type 4 legislative procedure. At the beginning of the public hearing tonight, staff will identify the applicable substantive criteria from the city's comprehensive plan and/or state of Oregon statewide planning goals. For anyone wishing to speak, we are asking you to use the speaker cards that are provided. When called upon to speak, you must be recognized by the chair, and you must state your name and address for the public record. Before we begin, does any commissioner wish to declare an actual or potential conflict of interest in this matter? All right, I will go ahead and open the hearing. LA-2023-06. And then we have a staff report, please, Fred.
Yep. Okay. All right. So hi there, everybody. We're here to look at a potential change to the variance in subchapter or section Independence Development Code 70.021. This standard right now only applies to one portion of the Community Hills Edition, and this would expand the existing variance in that section to other portions of the city that have a lot size between 9,000 and 10,000 square feet. There are some conditions that would be associated with it. Among those conditions are the fact that you would need to have access to 2 streets or a street and an alley to get to the 2 lots that would be created. They have to be essentially rectangular in shape. They have to be a residential lot, and they have to be able to be addressed. So, based on all of this stuff, the criteria that we are looking at tonight are in section 10 and subsection 11 of the Independence Development Code. I noted all of those things in the staff report. Basically, this is it's a fairly simple change, and it recognizes the fact that we have a whole bunch of lots in town that are like 90. Our predominant lot size in this portion of town is 9,801 square feet. That means you can't divide it in half, even though the lot is almost big enough to be divided in half. And so we've had folks come in and say, hey, I would like to divide my lot or add a new lot, add a new unit to my lot. What do I have to do? And the answer has been, well, you can go try and get 3 feet from your neighbor, which does not always work. So based on that, this would expand the allowed variance just a little bit, allow people to get into a lot and potentially create something in the back of their property or on the side of their property, wherever it may be, to potentially get that second lot. We see this as having potential benefit to the people in the house, that they could get some additional money then from that sale to help them stay in the house. We also see that it could potentially benefit folks who are just looking to buy a smaller lot. So anyways, all variance requests would be required to come to you as the standard currently reads, it wouldn't change that at all. There are some just slight tweaks to the standards. One of them was that the previous standards that applied to Hills Edition required a flag lot, 15 feet to the front of the lot. This draft would simply say you have to have access to either an alley in a street or a street in a street to be able to do this variance. There's also new standards that would say specifically any lot to be created has to be able to be addressed, and all easements necessary for the lot have to be recorded as part of the creation of that lot. So a lot of times sewers are running in the back alley. If you have a front lot and you need to get access to that sewer, you got to record an easement as part of the partition that would create those two lots. And so that's just simply saying that. We did have that question from you folks and from Karen about how are we going to address this. At this point, we don't exactly know, but we're confident that we have one of two solutions of how we can address, so we don't really feel like it's going to be an issue. We did look at what other communities do, and Eugene actually named their alleys. I can't remember how they name them.
The same
Like
way
with this.
as we are proposing.
Yeah, the same way that, we're actually routing through the idea of naming our alleys. How they name theirs is, they go from, so with ours, it would be Main Alley, which would be the one to the west of Main, Second Alley, the one to the west of Second, and just so on. That's how Eugene names their alleys. The other option that we have, if people look at that and they say that's a really dumb idea, is we can just simply require like grouped mailboxes at the front of the lot, and then just number it based on the lot. So we have that option as well. So ultimately, we feel fairly comfortable with this. Folks in the office have taken a look at it. There is a map attached for your reference, attachment B. Karen, can you just show that? Here sort of demonstrates the lots that are between 9,000 and 10,000 square feet, and specifically the ones that are outlined in black without the X's or the hatches through them are the ones that would be available to have this new standard applied to them. So and you can kind of see there, like if it's on a corner in some of these places, it would be able to apply, but like the Rhoda Lane, can you show Rhoda Lane, Karen, and zoom in, it's sort of by just north of Central Plaza.
Find my Zoom here.
So you can see like Rhoda Lane, not many of those lots would have access to this standard because they don't have access to that second street or an alley in the area. So it would just solely apply to the corner lots and in a place like that. But more in the older portion of town where there are alleys present, you can see more and more lots would have access to the requirements. So based on everything, I've sent this to the folks that need notice. It's been on our website. My recommendation is recommendation of approval. Ultimately, I do think that for those instances, like one gentleman who came in recently, it's just a far better policy stance to be able to say you have to go through, or you can go through this variance to create that lot, rather than to say you can try and jerry rig your home to have another attached building and then draw the lot line in between them. So I would recommend approval of this. Questions?
Any questions of Fred? Kevin?
Nobody's made any comments at all? Okay.
Hey Fred, just to make sure the public comment, or the public notice is the same as any other consistent variance of the 250 for folks
Yeah.
directly impacted, and then notices citywide kind of deal, like.
That's right, so anybody who comes in and requests this will go out to folks within 250 feet. Anybody applying for this will have to go through a public hearing process through you folks. So I do think that assures that there's not gonna be any sort of like, potential for unforeseen circumstances or
Hey Fred, why is the air park neighborhood exempted?
So can you scroll up just a little bit? The minimum lot size in the air park is a different lot size altogether. It's 13,000 square feet. It's not 5,000 square feet. So I think that's partially why they didn't fall within that 9,000 and 10,000 lot size.
Hi, Fred. Maybe it just might not be clear to me, but this is irrespective of the historic preservation district, then, correct?
Right, so any sort of proposal would still have to go through the applicable historic preservation review of any house proposed on the lot. What you folks would review is essentially the going down to the lot size. They would still have to record a partition to divide the lots, and then a separate application would get applied for a house on a lot. So that would have to go through historic preservation if it's in the historic preservation district.
Any other questions?
Still a bit of a complicated process, but as I argue in my staff report, one of the footnotes, like the fact of trying to get 3 feet from a neighbor and then do a lot line adjustment to get to the plat is also a very complicated process. And in some instances, it's just simply infeasible. The guy who came in who sort of inspired this change, I was like, if you could get 3 feet from your neighbor, he's like, he's got his outbuilding right on the property line. I can't get 3 feet, you know? And so based on that, he's sort of stuck.
More questions? Well, I don't think we'll have any testimony, so I'll go ahead. If there are no objections, I will now close the public hearing on the record. So it's up to us. And I think Karen would be very nice and put the motion on the street.
If you're ready for it.
Yeah, I'll comment just a bit, I think. I like it seems well reasoned and well thought out. I love hearing about people coming in and like thinking about something and inspiring like this process. So, because it feels the right kind of responsive. And it doesn't seem like it's not a drastic, huge shift, right? I mean, it's an incremental, we're talking 200 square feet.
That's
basically.
right.
So I appreciate going through this, even if there's no one here to see it.
Yeah.
I'm surprised. I thought there would be some folks who did.
Yeah.
I prefer that we support infill options
Yeah,
anyway,
right.
besides, other than sprawl around the edges, so I really support this.
I would say that I appreciate how we're making it consistent across, so it's not just this special neighborhood gets this exemption, but the entire community gets this exemption, and it makes it easier for people who want to create alternative housing to do so in an infill, as you're saying. So I just really appreciate the work that the staff has done to make that happen. So thank you.
Yeah, well, I think I've told this story before, but you know, I had that conversation with that guy, and I went back and I was talking to our relatively new city engineer. He's just like, I was telling him what I told him. I told him he could attach houses to his existing house. This guy's existing house is kind of like a flat roof, like 50s era. To attach a house to a flat roof 50s era thing, it just looks weird, you know? And so I'm like, I don't like that answer. I started talking with the new city engineer, and he says, well, is that a good policy decision? You know, are you gonna settle for that, you know, essentially? And I was like, no, absolutely no. So anyways, I mean, it was partially that, and it's not a difficult change, you're right, it's like a little tiny change.
I appreciate your advocacy to make it more fun.
That's right, well, and I mean, hopefully, I mean, and you look at this lot in particular, you're like, I can see where a house would go on it. Like, literally, it's obvious. I don't know.
All right, ready for motion?
I'll make the motion. I move to approve file number LA-2023-06, recommending to the City Council the amendment of the Independence Development Code to expand the allowed 4,500 square feet lot size variance, adopting findings, conditions, and staff recommendations as provided in the staff report and as amended.
Kevin seconds. All those in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion passes. All right, let's move on to item 7.2, public hearing on amend development code land use extension approvals. So this evening, the planning commission will hold a public hearing on legislative amendment LA-2024-01, potential change to extension process for land use approvals. Planning Commission will make a recommendation to the City Council based on the complete record, including the testimony received at tonight's public hearing. These proceedings will be recorded. This hearing will be held in accordance with the land use procedures required by the City and the State of Oregon. This is a Type 4 legislative procedure. At the beginning of the public hearing tonight, staff will identify the applicable substantive criteria from the City's comprehensive plan and/or State of Oregon statewide planning goals. For anyone wishing to speak, we are asking you to use the speaker cards that are provided. When called upon to speak, you must be recognized by the chair, and you must state your name and address for the public record. Before we begin, does any commissioner wish to declare an actual or potential conflict of interest in this matter? None noted. I will go ahead and open public hearing LA-2024-01. And another staff report, please.
Yeah, perfect. So this one is, and you've seen this before, is the change to the extension allowances or requirements. Currently in the Independence Development Code, there are a number of different extension processes, and some land use applications you can't extend at all. Some, they never expire. So based on that, what this recommends is creating a consistent expiration process. So you can say to certain applications, I'm sorry, you're expired, or to others, yeah, sure, you can extend your application, just go through this process. It would establish criteria for the extension. You can see those on page 36 of your packet, where it talks about the criteria. And then it would just take out the remaining portions of the code that sort of talk about the procedures for criteria, the procedures for extension, excuse me. So based on all of this, oh yeah, one more thing is it would establish a consistent process for extensions. So type 2 would be good for 2 years, with an option to extend it for 1 year. There is no limit to the number of extensions. We sort of had a discussion about how many extensions we should have. We think the provisions in there, or the consensus at the last meeting where we talked about it, was with the number of, with the criteria in there and the specific requirements to submit an extension request, and also to be consistent with the code at the time, that sort of offered a backstop to make sure that folks were not going to get too out of line with relation to some of these extensions. So the type 2 would be good for 2 years with an option to extend it for 1 year. The type 1, which is an administrative proposal, or which is an administrative approval by me, would be good for 1 year with an option to extend it for 1 year. Type 2 applications, just for your reference, include things like bigger site design review, things like conditional uses, things like certain variances, things like subdivisions, land unit development, stuff like that. Type 1 proposals. Type 2 proposals also include historic preservation reviews. Though you don't see those, the Historic Preservation Commission does. Type 1 proposals include smaller site design review, smaller little lot divisions, stuff like that. So based on all of this stuff, I sent it to the Department of Land Conservation and Development. I did not receive any comments back. I did get a question about it, but I sent the gentleman the staff report and I didn't hear anything back. Also, it's been published in the newspaper, it's on our website, all of that stuff. My recommendation is to approve this as well. I think that this is an absolutely good step because there's certain applications, like, let's say, large site design reviews that are just difficult to get off the ground sometimes. And right now, under the code, it says you're good for 2 years, you have no option to extend. This would give folks the option to extend that proposal. So I think generally this is a very good step forward and recommend approval.
Thank you, Fred. Any commissioners have questions of staff?
Are there any, actions that are in place where we've had a request for
An
an
extension.
extension, and will this apply to? How will, I guess maybe my real question is, what's the applicability of this? Is it applicable to things currently in existence, or?
I would say that this would apply to things, I would say this would apply to things in existence, though I think that we would have trouble applying it to things that don't expire, like Historic Preservation Commission approvals. So future Historic Preservation Commission approvals or Historic Preservation approvals, I would say definitely will apply to this, but I think some of those older ones might be sort of locked in with a no approval, but or no expiration. So that's how I plan to implement this going forward.
Kevin?
Thank you, Chair. So my question's around the type 2 process for an extension. So it says that the extension has to be given in a public meeting, but we're not going to notice it.
Right.
And so my concern around that, and maybe it's not a concern, but it's how do we ensure that the public is kind of in the loop about these projects? So, you know, the example I used in previous meetings was like what happened in West Salem, where the council at the time gave these like indefinite extensions, people forgot that they were happening, and once, you know, financing opened up after the recession, everything started building all at once, right? And so, you know, I don't foresee that happening at the same level in Independence that happened in West Salem. But how do we ensure that the community is still in the loop of like, oh, that project is still, you know, pending, and it is coming up for an extension if we're not going to notice that?
Right. I think what I want, my one concern is I don't want this to look like land use public hearing. Because I don't want people to.
Understood. And it makes sense that you don't want to have to redo the whole thing, right?
Right.
That's not what we're talking about, right? But how do we, and maybe there isn't a way, so I will accept like that's not possible, if you truly think that, but how do we ensure that people, you know, are kind of kept in that loop? Because I think there's that disconnect is once things are approved, if they don't see dirt move, they kind of forget it, right?
Yeah. So, I mean, one thing that we have done in the past, and it's still on our website, but I used to edit our planning page, and so it's way easier for me to do it. I don't get to edit the page anymore. They removed that ability from me. And so we have a list of projects and their status on the page. And so folks could potentially go to something like that. We could use a vehicle like that to keep people like, hey, this approval is good through such and such a date. That could be something. We also have our little notice signs, but it says notice of application. The concern that I would have is folks attending in mass and then rehashing a thing, and then we're going into the extension proposal, not exactly prepared for a full-blown land use hearing, or a re-land use hearing.
Yeah, I was gonna say, that would be my concern with having to re-adjudicate what's already been approved. And I think it puts us in a bad position. Not that it's about us, so, but it's just like, if you didn't know about it 2 years ago, when it got approved, and are now now you're hearing about it, you've talked about it, fair, you show up, but that's not what the hearing is about. I feel like the website, we had talked about this like 2 or 3 years ago, right? Of like making sure that projects were updated and all that stuff. And I know that's difficult. So it's time consuming to just keep on top of all those things, but I feel like that's probably the best way. It's like, here were anything that's still open-ended, just be able to look. But I don't know, it seems like re-noticing everything, it seems broad.
Can I follow up, Chair? So I guess so what would this look like on the docket? Is my question.
Right, it would be on new business like this, but it wouldn't specifically say public hearing. It would say request for extension of.
And it would have the address or whatever.
Right,
That's a notice in my mind.
Sorry to interrupt. I think, we've done at least, I think, a half a dozen extensions that I can remember off the top of my head. I think this is probably no different, right? It's in the agenda packet, it's under new business item. If you're paying attention,
Only staff report.
30 staff report around it. I guess the question that I have just related to this, going from, so you have the plan unit, development, administrative variance, conditional use, they're all at 180 days with a 180-day extension, but you're theoretically going from 6 months of approval process to 3 years to an extension. I guess from 1 year to 3 years.
right, you're talking about
Versus what it is right now.
right.
I don't have a position statement on that.
Yeah.
I'm just wondering if there's any little ripple effect. Is there anything that
So
might be?
I will.
To your Spidey senses, team.
No, partially, I've been here now, I'm a five-year anniversary, March 1st. Yeah.
5 years already.
Can you imagine that? Yeah, that's super long, right? So, but in 5 years, I think we've had one conditional use permit. We have had no variances, and I will just say, you will not see a lot of variances from me because I tend to discourage people from even applying, because I think that a lot of people think that they could get a variance to ignore some standards, and they don't have the hardship required to receive a variance. So people ask, I always say no, you're not gonna be able to prove that based on the criteria.
That's more or less kind of what I was looking for, or just what's the volume, what's this look like, what's the maybe the unintended consequences of extending that timeline. I don't know enough to foresee those, but I'm just asking from your perspective.
Just the conditional use that we had, it was right when I got here, was for St. Patrick's. They put in the mobiles back behind the church, or to the side of the church. That was that was a conditional use. I think it took them a fair amount of time to get them in there. And so I don't know if they hit that 180-day threshold, but we knew that they were working on it. They were in progress. So I don't know. For instances like that, I probably don't have conditions. Oh, another conditional use was the church down here.
Yeah, and I remember I was here for that.
Any other questions, staff? Okay, Evan?
I guess my request to you would just be to add the link to the pending to the extension, so it says for review. You can look at, or on the bottom somewhere in the packet, where people can click on the link and just go. Because I do think what you're saying is, in my mind, that is a notice, but as a friendly reminder to our neighbors, here are the pending projects in our community, right? You know? And so then you're not rehashing the whole conversation, it's just a friendly reminder, because the scenario that I keep thinking of is someone who moved in after the approval, wasn't told,
Yeah.
and then is like, what the heck? And didn't have the opportunity to, from their perspective, didn't have the opportunity to have their say in what's going on around, right? And so if we can say like, friendly reminder, here's what has been approved, we're giving an extension, here's the time they have for extension, and then they could apply again theoretically, then I feel like that notice is kind of satisfied from my perspective.
I think that sounds good. When Tom Pessimir was here, and we were doing River City briefs in paper, one of the things that we did a lot of times was a development project update. It was right up front, where we were like giving folks updates about projects going on. Since we've gone to more of the River City briefs, or whatever it's called now, online, I just completely got out of that momentum of doing that but like, I know that me and Emmanuel have talked about the idea of getting more development projects in that. And as part of that, we could then link to our site and say, hey, if you're interested about any other projects going on in town, go ahead and go to this.
Yeah.
Go. And that would be a way to potentially do that.
Right, any other questions? No more testimony, so if there are no objections, I will now close the record and public hearing. Karen.
One more quick comment is that I appreciate the stream. I mean, I know we've done a lot of streamlining stuff. Appreciate the process because it makes us look at what the current stuff is. It makes you kind of take a look, and you don't know necessarily the why of how it got to where it got. But I appreciate being able to like think about what that process looks like.
Right, yeah. Yeah, this was ultimately the easiest way to do it, was rather than going into each section and trying to do it.
Right, that makes sense.
All right.
I move to approve file number LA-2024-01, recommending to the City Council the amendment of the Independence Development Code to revise the extension process for land use approvals, adopting findings, conditions, and staff recommendations as provided in the staff report.
Second. Have any seconds? All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion passes. Folks. All right, we'll move on to other discussion and information items.
Cool. Well, I got a video. What sort of video do you want to watch? I have one of the two. Do you want a transit video or do you want a housing video? Housing, okay.
You do have it.
I will say one of the things I heard, this is just a food for thought piece, sort of dealing with planning and land use and whatnot, is that a person coming in, so a customer, client, citizen, whatever, it's maybe one of a handful of times they're ever going to have that interactive experience versus the planning staff, who's obviously their staff doing day in, day out. And so I appreciate the simplification of processes, so it's just more So the one time that you're gonna deal with it, it doesn't feel like, well, actually, if you live in this neighborhood, this and that, and that, you know, sort of what all the rules are, so I just, that comment, I heard it 2 or 3 weeks ago, so it kind of rattled around in my head. And, I think it's sort of how you approach the work, but just,
Yeah, somebody said at one time, it's like a doctor, you know, a doctor, when you go into a doctor, it's an emergency for you, but it's everyday occurrence for a doctor.
Same thing.
It's the same thing.
Yeah.
Like, no one builds more than one, you know,
Yeah.
very few people like
Yeah.
build their own house or whatever, going through this stuff, you know, we get contractors and whatnot, but.
I just like the code and saw the simplification and streamlining as a result of that, so, anyway.
That's good.
Okay.
All right,
You're gonna have to give me a minute.
this is, I don't know, it's, I was gonna show you one about Vienna that was pretty good, but I kinda think this guy's a little bit funny. We'll see.
We'll be in Vienna next year, or this year, Christmas time.
Cool,
I've got it.
You got it.
go for it.
I can get my pencil here.
think I was planning to cut that off a little earlier, but you know what? I think that's a pretty interesting video. I think that guy does a fairly good job on that. Any thoughts?
I'll look forward to the time we have a 3-day worth of testimony.
Careful what you say.
Careful what you say.
Is there anything coming down the pike I need to be worried about?
You know what? I've been in longer public hearings than that.
Really?
Yeah.
We had a long one a few years back. The marijuana outfit.
Before my time.
That was before your time? Sally was here. Or I guess where the veterans at. And that was interesting. But people get mad when things they don't want by. So, it's all part of the process.
Any specific takeaways that anybody has?
Well, I consider the way that the tax code is structured for nonprofits in Canada versus how they're set up here in the rest of the world, right? With non-market housing, I mean, is it, the non-profit organizations are by law, it's, you know, the very nature is non-profit, right? So it's like, how much of it is yeah, just basically, there are contractual obligations in order to maintain their status, right? What do they have to offer the community and so forth, so, yeah, I mean, just take a look at how the tax codes are set up.
Yeah, I think there's more to that conversation than a 14-minute YouTube video probably.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, I just think it sort of starts scratching the surface, and I mean, you know, the whole idea of getting money to build non-market housing, I mean, that's tough, right there.
I mean, ultimately, you need a critical mass to start being competitive, but you just need units. And if you had an overabundance of units, even in market housing, you would have you'd have a more competitive market. Just by supply and demand.
I mean, I think his point there with the vacancy rate at like 1.5%.
Yeah.
It's like, you know, we have a situation similar to that here. And, you know, the housing needs analysis, we were asking that question, like, how can we get rent, like, what can we do most effectively? And we heard so many times from the experts, you gotta just create more units.
Right.
More units.
It's interesting because, I don't know if you know who Harry Glickman is, but he's the person who founded the Portland Trailblazers.
Mm-hmm.
And what he did for a living was build affordable housing.
Wow.
And he was on Kennedy's Housing Commission National, and he was a huge advocate for building non-market rate housing to say, like, we need to ensure that people have a chance to build wealth, and once people build wealth, you lift people out of poverty, and then people have the ability to pass that wealth on, right? It changes family trees. And, you know, he had pull in the Kennedy administration, and things obviously changed, right? And you saw that in the dip, starting in the 1980s till very recently in that video, where people just stopped prioritizing. And unfortunately, because of lots of things, public housing gained reputations, especially in the United States, right? But it is something interesting to think of. And another local poll, Peter Courtney, when Peter Courtney came to Oregon, he lived in YMCA housing in Salem. And it was the only place he could afford. And just think about, you know, his story and how he didn't really even have much in his pocket when he came here and was able to become the Senate president forever and ever. But just think about, like, we had these opportunities 60, 70 years ago in this country, and we don't really anymore. So how do we turn that, you know, around? And how do we do it in partnership with private industry instead of, you know, in opposition? Because you want to make sure that, I mean, what the video lacked from my perspective is the benefits of a private market, which is you get nice things when you are able to pay for nice things, right? And when you have a non-market rate, there's costs associated with not only paying for the bills associated with the housing in general, right? So it's like, how do we find a way to work in partnership to provide that option for folks who can't necessarily afford? And I see Salem doing some of this stuff, so that the housing in downtown at the mall, you know, most of that is private, but it subsidizes the like 30 or so units that are affordable, you know, for example. So I think we can look at some things that our neighbors are doing to try to find ways to make that happen.
Right. Yeah, no, I think, I do think that we're gonna be talking about stuff like this more and more as we're looking at the housing production strategy coming up. And I mean, even things like the downtown parking strategy, or the downtown parking experience project that we're doing, I mean, in so many cases, the amount of development that you can do on a site is limited by your ability to park the development that you're doing. And so what happens is people constrain the size of their development based on the size of the amount of parking that they can provide on site. And it's just a weird dynamic, you know, it's weird, it's always been weird to me, and especially more so, we're very flat here. When I was planning up in Washington, we dealt with some topography, and minimum lot sizes, and really strange topography just never made sense to me, because if you require 5,000 square feet minimum lot, and you're doing it on a slope like this, you've got lots running way up slopes. You know, it's like, that never made sense to me at all. It's the same exact thing with parking. You know, you're designing the site based on drive aisle widths and your parking dimension that you need. It's weird, what we do to the built environment to meet the regulations. Yeah. So anyways, I don't know. I think that guy's kind of funny. That was a piece of video.
Right. Move to adjourn.
I have an announcement.
Oh, very good.
I can. March 20th, I think Fred knows what I'm about to talk about.
Yeah, it's
Mr. Rogers' birthday, and the Monmouth Independence Trolley is having a birthday celebration for Mr. Rogers. They're encouraging folks to wear cardigans and take selfies on the trolley and tag Monmouth Independence Trolley on social media. So I would encourage my fellow commissioners to join me. It's from 11 to 5, any time in the day that you could make it on the trolley. You know, raise awareness to the trolley, plus recognize a really cool person, so.
I'll have to cross the street though.
Yeah,
that's right.
I'm gonna escort you across the street.
All right, thank you, Evan.
I just have a question for Karen. When can we expect the statement of economic interest links from the Oregon?
March 15th.
March 15th, okay.
More or less.
All right, by the motion for adjournment.
Yeah. I motion.
Okay, have a second?
I'll second.
All those in favor? Aye. We are adjourned. Thank you, everyone.
Thanks, Fred.
And thank you, Fred.
Yeah, thanks.
5 years.
5 years, believe it or not.